exploring the culture, the adventure, and the impact of martial arts. That's what we do at Kung Fu Podcast. I'm your host, Sifu T.W. Smith. Thank you so much for joining me today in episode number 105. If this is your first time joining the program, welcome. We welcome everybody. Doesn't matter which type of style of martial arts you practice or even the reason that you might practice it. We always kind of go through lists, so I'm not going to go through them all right now. But as long as you know what you're practicing for and that your training is aligned with that objective, you're solid here. We're glad to have you. And by we, I mean the Kung Fu Podcast family. Some of the finest and sharpest martial artists in the world are an audience to this program. In fact, many of them have things going on in their lives right now that I give you a quick catch-up on. Ian, congratulations to the new addition to your family. I love that picture of you and the little one about to fall asleep on the couch after a hard day. Andrea has her new book coming out. She's got a lot of stuff going on, and she's really working to let people know about that book. And if you want to know more about it, just go to kungfupodcast.com and look underneath the Die Hard Library section, and you'll find her book. Right before I cranked up the Blue Dragon mic, I checked and had a notice that my friend Ando Merswa has some new material out, and I didn't get to read the whole thing, but it looked like it was associated with sucker punches, how to avoid them, or some tips associated with staying away from them. I like I said, I didn't get to read it, but I just saw it was out. And then there are a couple more of my friends who I've been following this week, Troy Price and Alex Ormaza. And both of those guys I've mentioned here on the podcast before. Alex I've met a couple of times, and one of the first times was down at Myrtle Beach. And the second time he invited me as a guest to his dojo in Dallas, North Carolina. The second gentleman, Troy Price, I have known about for years, and I did get to meet him while I was down in Dallas. But they've both been down in Florida with others delivering a workshop on Shuri-te. And part of the other reason I wanted to mention it is because in 2017, April 7th, 8th, and 9th, they're going to have the Shuri-te Martial Arts International Conference right there in Dallas, North Carolina, and I'm planning to be there. I hope that you'll put that on your calendar. That's April 7th, 8th, and 9th, 2017. And if you want to find out more about it, just go to kungfupodcast.com/Shuri-te, Shurite, and I'll have it set up to take you right over there so you can get more information on it. The next thing on the podcast is where a listener wrote in. But before I go into it, I want to take a moment and let you know that I greatly appreciate any time you all take to share with me your thoughts or feelings or questions about the program, whether it's through a review or directly through an email. Some of you even text me now or get a hold of me through private messages on Facebook or Twitter. Any place you want to do it is fine. I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing more about it. So now let's hear the question that this listener wrote me. A listener wrote in, and they had said, quote, Sifu, I found the podcast on Aikido and adopting a culture that is not typically ours, very appealing and accurate to my life experiences, end quote. Now, I'm going to paraphrase it along the way to keep their identity private. But basically what they're saying is that they live in a small Midwestern U.S. town, and they're trying to find an identity of their own, or while in the pursuit of it, other people look at them as if they're crazy. Literally as if they are asking, what possible reason would we follow an obscure Asian art when we could be out there deer hunting or bass fishing? And then they ask me, have you had similar experiences? I'm just curious if others experience the same and how to approach it. Well, thank you very much for writing in. And I can share a few things about, one, why was I pursuing my own life experience and trying to look at my own identity. And then the second is, what was my experience coming from a Bible Belt, small North Carolina town? Well, in case you didn't know, I just did a little foreshadowing there. The main reason I got involved in the martial arts was because I was trying to find my own identity. I didn't know it as such at the time. You have to understand that as a social person, I probably wasn't the best one to be around because I didn't really know enough. I mean, I cared about people a lot, and I was in the healthcare systems, But I didn't know a lot about self-development, and particularly about my self-development. My mom was always great, always busted her butt for me, tried to raise me and my brother and sisters as best they could. And then after my dad left, he put us in a pretty bad situation. Then a few years later, he died. Well, as you can imagine, I'm about 21, 22 years old at the time. Not quite sure how I'm going to make it. I'm in graduate school up at Appalachian State when that happened. So I'm not really sure what a man is supposed to be. I mean, as far as out there in the big blue world. So I'm trying to find myself and who I want to be. And I'm doing a pretty, I'll just say a piss poor job of it at the time. I wasn't bad. I wasn't like, getting in real trouble or nothing, but I was making some pretty silly mistakes. And unfortunately, I was making some mistakes over and over again and not recognizing that it was me that was the problem. So that was, trying to find, okay, what about my identity do I need to alter and change these variables? Because unfortunately, I'm an algorithmic person by nature. I will usually analyze the poor crap out of everything, and until I literally end up in paralysis. So I had to unlearn how to do that so I could evaluate myself a little bit more objectively and honestly, trying to just look at what cause and effect sort of thing. So as I was going through it, I knew that I had to change myself because I was the main variable. In fact, I did a whole podcast over at Tibetan Kung Fu one time that was called The Common Denominator. And it was a podcast that basically I share a lot about how I kept looking in my life and seeing all these scenarios playing out. And I realized through some meditation, literally, that I was the only common theme in all of these images and pictures. So it really made me sit back again and go, okay, I've got to change some things. Really started searching out more. I'd already tried the church. I tried a few other things, and it didn't work out well at all, which kind of segues me into what was my experience in the pursuit of my changing my identity. And one of the things that happened, if you're not familiar with North Carolina, particularly in some of the smaller towns, the church has a great influence has had a great influence on about how things is ran here in the past, and it still does. And it's unfortunate in many cases because others will project their beliefs onto you, even if you are not doing anything wrong. So when I was trying to find my identity, I went to the church first. But at the time, I had started studying Tai Chi just more casually on the side. I had not quite found my Sifu yet, but I was in this pursuit of finding some teaching that might help me better understand myself, and I was looking into different places. And it led me into finding a good friend who knew Tai Chi pretty well, wasn't a Sifu and didn't try to be, but was trying to teach me Tai Chi, learning how to slow down, pay attention to some things other than just the things happen around me, but actually pay attention to myself. Well, what happened was when you come from a small North Carolina town, you can't do that kind of thing, and a lot of people in that town don't know about it within just a couple of weeks. A little bit later, I'd go to church, and some of the people that I'd known for a long time, all of a sudden, wasn't sitting beside me anymore in church. One day, I'd go in there to talk to the preacher, and, I asked specifically, and as I'm pointing to the Bible, I says, Jesus went out to pray and meditate on a regular basis. Why don't we meditate? I mean, we talk about prayer all the time, but I don't know if I've ever heard the word meditate in the church ever in my life. And I was told meditation is some of that Asian work. It opens your mind, and an open mind is the pathway for the devil. Well, as you can imagine, that kind of put me on the spot, right? I mean, everybody knew I was practicing Tai Chi, even though it was very informal. They also knew that, I was from the area, and I should know better than to do that. So I had to really start making some decisions, and I did. I chose trying to find a better life for myself and a better way for myself. And fortunately, some of the closest people to me never left my side, and including my mom and my brother and my sisters, most of my family who were close to me. They were always supportive of me, even when they didn't understand me, because I didn't understand myself. I couldn't help them along. And that was the kind of thing that really took a lot of work for me to pursue my identity, but then also realize that the pursuit of the identity wasn't the only pressure and fights I was going to have to make. It was changing and not meeting other people's expectations that they had already preset for me, that I was going to have to let go of all that too. So it carried some collateral damage that I wasn't expecting. But it was all worth it in the end. And I hope that for every one of you, if you're out there and you're trying to look at how your mom and your daddy raised you, or what did you learn from your preachers and teachers? And trust me, I have a lot of preachers and ministers I have a tremendous amount of respect for. But when you're looking at trying to find your way, don't be afraid. Put yourself and your pursuit, your self-development, above anything else that you have in regards to that if you make yourself better, the people that you want to be around and you care about will eventually also see you as getting better. The ones who don't see you as getting better usually never wanted you to get better. They wanted to keep you in the box that they had you, and if you're trying to get out, you're a problem because they're not really concerned about you. They're more concerned about your placement in their life, and your personal development will interfere with that placement. So I cannot really give you an overall approach except for the fact when you feel like you got an empty place in your heart and your soul, start looking. Look into the church. See what you can find. I found some good things there that I still use today. But don't look in one place as if you're only going to find one golden egg that's going to solve your problems. You might want to keep digging. Before I get into the featured essay of today's episode, I want to remind you that Kung Fu Podcast is a value for value program, and I work hard to provide value to some of the finest and sharpest martial artists in the world, people like yourself. And if you do find value in this, you can help support this program by going to kungfupodcast.com/support, or you can leave a review in different places that you might find the podcast. You can email me and let me know what you think about the program, or you can even just tell a friend about the program, and I would greatly appreciate it. And now the featured essay by Kai Morgan on looking for secrets within your martial arts study. This article was written on October 2016 by Miss Kai Morgan, who I've featured here before in other Kung Fu podcasts. I wrote Kai. She gave me permission to share this article with you here at Kung Fu Podcast. If you want to find her other essays and her articles, go to budo-inochi.com. Better yet, just go to kungfupodcast.com/Kai, Kai, and that link will take you right to her website. The article is based on a lecture given by Dr. Ben Spatz at the 2016 Martial Arts Studies Conference at Cardiff University. Now, just in case you didn't know, Martial Arts Studies Conference is the place you find other agents of action, like Ben Judkins and Dr. Paul Bowman. The lecture was titled Embodied Research, an Epistemic Context for Martial Arts Practice. Kai starts the essay by giving you a little backdrop about some of the things that was going on in her life and how it connected to the essay by Dr. Spatz. She says, my friend is talking about a friend of hers. She says, you'll have to meet him. I think you'd really get along. He plays Kung Fu, and he's as crazy about it as you are about Aikido. And Kai says, I corrected her and said the appropriate verb isn't play, it's train in. And they both laugh. But that day and conversation seem very distant now. Since then, karate has replaced Aikido, and in my new dojo, the appropriate verb is no longer train, it's now study. At first this seems odd, but then one of these senseis explained why they preferred this word. Training can be defined as the action of teaching a person or an animal a particular skill or a type of behavior, and that's certainly a large part of what we do in martial arts, but there's so much more. So Kai says that we use the word study to indicate the rich depth of reflection, exploration, and possibility underpinning the kata and other physical training. The sensei's face lights up as he talks about the rich, satisfying, immersive experience of studying karate. Kai says she loves listening to the sensei's explanation, but she's also left with the feeling that it's out of her reach. The sensei's been training for so many years in this art, and he understands a lot of things that she can't access yet. But she knows it's different and good to study in this dojo, but she can't quite capture yet or express that feeling in language. Kai says to herself, what exactly is this experience that the sensei's describing? And how will I get there too? Now, coming up in our article, Kai is going to mention embodied knowledge. Now, we have spoke about this a lot in the previous episodes of 102, 103, and 104. Kung Fu Podcast number 94 and 95 with Dr. Tan and Aikido and embodied knowledge in a dojo up in Canada was, that's what those podcasts go into a great deal about. And basically, embodying knowledge means that you're going to embrace something so deep and so thorough that your body understands it. And I don't just mean in martial arts. I'm talking about how your mama and daddy responds to when a neighbor comes by. Do they look angry? How do they look when they get angry? Do you look the same way that your parents did when they had a certain emotion? Because you learned how to express yourself physically, usually by the people who are closest to you. And remember that martial arts is primarily built around corporeal action, which is relating completely to your tangible body, the things that you can feel, the flesh and bone of your body. A definition of embodied knowledge is the routines, the expressions, the habits, the tasks, and information our bodies understand without conscious thought. Embodied knowledge is a type of knowledge where the body knows how to act without you having to consciously think about it. A simple and general example is riding a bicycle. As we go through the rest of Kai's essay, it is very important to remember that concept of embodied knowledge. The research and unique scientific terminology is related to the understanding is that your body has the ability to sense and moves, and it serves as an active conduit that contributes to the self-body of knowledge. You and I are going to start to see how this research is directly related to martial arts as we continue through this essay. Another term you might want to be aware of is habitus. We've defined this word before in Kung Fu Podcast, and habitus is usually the general body's constitution. In fact, it is sometimes described as a system of embodied dispositions that are tendencies that organize the ways in which individuals perceive the social world around them and react to it. It would be appropriate now to introduce Dr. Ben Spatz, who's an expert in the field of embodied knowledge. And as we said before, he was given a lecture at the 2016 Martial Arts Studies Research Network Conference at Cardiff University. The Cardiff biography says that Ben Spatz is a senior lecturer in drama, theater, and performance. He moved to Huddersfield from New York City in 2013 to join the Center for Psychophysical Performance Research. Dr. Spatz holds a Ph.D. in theater from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York and a bachelor's degree with honors from the College of Letters at Wesleyan University in Connecticut. He is obviously one intelligent and well-researched man. It goes on to say Dr. Spatz is also the author of What a Body Can Do. Technique is knowledge, practice is research. To find all the links, just go to kungfupodcast.com/105. But Dr. Spatz has also published several essays and articles in academic and artistic journals. His research focuses on the transmission and innovation of embodied knowledge across physical culture, performing arts, and everyday life. Now, with that understanding, let's get back into Kai's essay. The sensei was explaining why he uses the word study rather than train. And Kai says that all she could think about while listening to him is, aha, so this is why we call it study. The heart of Dr. Spatz's talk at the 2016 conference is an intriguing idea from the sociologist Karen Cetina. Cetina argues that when we look at normal everyday objects from the outside, they seem fixed and complete, like a closed box. But objects of knowledge, for example, a martial arts kata or a technique, are different to physical objects. Like Mary Poppins' magic carpet bag, they can be opened up and explored from the inside to reveal endless surprises. Satina writes that they appear to have the capacity to unfold indefinitely, but this also means that objects of knowledge can never be fully attained. Dr. Spence says that when he read this from Satina, he almost fell over. His thought was that this precisely describes his experience, and that you have to learn some sort of pattern, get into it, and then go into it some more, and the more you go into it, the bigger it gets. And that's not how it works with an object that you buy from the store. With something like a song or a martial arts form, you go in there, you start to learn, and you realize very quickly there's a lot more. It's not that you go in and you dominate it and it closes off and then you have it as if you've mastered it. Something new or a variation of the old always appears. Well, we're getting near that 20-minute mark, and I've been trying to keep these podcasts between 15 to 30 minutes, and we still have a lot more to cover in this particular essay and some of the thoughts and things that come along with it. So I'm going to go ahead and put a bookmark in this particular episode where first I shared part of my story of why I started looking into martial arts as a form of identity change, even though I didn't really think of it as an identity change at the time as far as a formal word. However, it was definitely something that was needed. And then also the unexpected collateral changes that occurred during the pursuit of me trying to change myself. We also covered in this episode an introduction to Kai's essay, Looking for Secrets in the Martial Arts. And it began with a simple verb usage that went from playing to training to studying the martial arts. And this is actually something that is a very good progression to consider. If you approach something with the attitude of playing with it, where it's not too intense, it actually reduces the tension, the internal tension, which in turn helps you learn faster. Training in something helps us to increase our knowledge, but along with that, it also increases the questions. Studying increases the solutions to those questions, but it also brings deeper questions to the forefront. We got introduced to the PhD and author Dr. Spatz and the sociologist Karen Satina. In the next episode, Kai is going to describe what it was like for her to be sitting in this new place in an academic area, hearing these theories, and what it was like to take the concepts and bring them back to her sensei and the dojo. Kai is also going to share with you some of the differences that she had in the 15 years of Aikido experience and what she missed in it. And we're also going to have more academia with what it means to have 3 levels of research inside of yourself and how would you define that. Exploring the culture, the adventure, and the impact of martial arts. Thank you so much for joining me today in episode number 105. I hope you have a fantastic practice today. And remember to go out there with the attitude that you can, maybe just play in your martial arts. Learn to experience it with a lighter heart. Then train in it. Put some real effort into it. But then to study it. Take your notes. Anything worth doing is usually worth writing about as well. And so if you look at my notebook, I've got notes that I just pulled out the other day for a student that share with them specifically on the spot 20-some years ago the very things they were asking me about. And I share with them my notes so that they could go back and learn through me and get the understanding of how important is it to take a real studied approach to your martial arts. This is Sifu T.W. Smith, and I'll be talking with you again real soon.